Admiral Kexthal stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars through the wide viewing window. His four eyes moved slowly across the display screens that showed hundreds of ships in his fleet. The Third Conquest Fleet was the pride of the Zephyrian Empire, and today they would add another world to their growing collection of conquered planets. Admiral, his second-in-command, Captain Vexamer, approached with a datapad in his clawed hands. The scouts have finished their study of the target planet. The species calls itself human and their world Earth. Kexthal took the pad and read through the information. His mouth curved into what his species considered a smile. Primitive creatures. They have only just learned to leave their planets. Surface. Their weapons are chemical-based, their ships are slow, and their technology is at least 300 years behind ours. Yes, Admiral. Our war computers estimate complete conquest within 6 hours. The humans have no orbital defenses worth mentioning, and their military appears to be scattered across their planet in small groups. Kexthal nodded. This would be another easy victory. In his 40 years of service to the Empire, he had conquered over 50 worlds. The pattern was always the same. His fleet would arrive, demonstrate their power, and the target species would surrender. Those who refused quickly learned the cost of defying the Zephyrian Empire. Send the standard surrender message, he ordered. Give them 1 hour to respond. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was having his morning coffee at the North American Defense Command when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. He dropped his cup and ran to the main control room, where dozens of technicians were staring at their screens in shock. What's happening? Jake demanded. Commander Lisa Brown turned from her station, her face pale. Jake, you need to see this. We're picking up massive energy signatures just outside our solar system. The computer counts over 400 objects, all larger than anything we've ever built. Jake looked at the main display screen. Hundreds of red dots were moving steadily toward Earth. Each dot represented a ship that dwarfed humanity's largest vessels. How long until they reach us? At their current speed, about 3 hours, Lisa replied. But Jake, there's something else. We're getting a transmission. The main screen changed to show a creature that was clearly not human. It had 4 eyes, gray skin, and wore what looked like a military uniform. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. People of Earth, the alien said, speaking in broken English. I am Admiral Kexthal of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for conquest and integration into our domain. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you comply, your leaders will be allowed to govern under our guidance. If you resist, your cities will be destroyed and your population reduced to manageable levels. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving the command room in stunned silence. Jake felt his heart pounding as he looked around at his team. Every face showed the same mixture of fear and disbelief. Sir, a young technician called out, we're getting similar transmissions at defense installations worldwide. The message is being broadcast in every major language. Jake walked to the communications station. Get me the President, the Joint Chiefs, and every world leader you can reach. We need to respond to this, and we need to do it fast. Within 30 minutes, Jake found himself in a video conference with leaders from around the world. The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the President of Russia, and dozens of other officials filled his screen. The situation is clear, the President said grimly. We're facing an invasion by a technologically superior force. Our military advisors estimate that our current weapons would be largely ineffective against their ships. So we surrender? Asked the German Chancellor. Never, replied Colonel Matt Rodriguez, who had joined the conference from the Pentagon. These aliens think they can just show up and demand our surrender. They don't understand what they're dealing with. Jake nodded. Matt's right. We've seen this before in our own history. Every time someone thought they could easily conquer a determined population, they learned they were wrong. The British thought they could easily control the American colonies. The Germans thought they could quickly defeat the Soviet Union. The Americans thought Vietnam would be a short conflict. But this is different, protested the Japanese Prime Minister. These are aliens with technology far beyond ours. Technology doesn't win wars, Jake said firmly. People do. Determination does. And if there's one thing humans have never been short of, it's the refusal to give up when someone tries to push us around. The president leaned forward. What are you proposing, Captain? We fight. We use every advantage we have. We make this invasion so costly that they'll wish they had never heard of Earth. Lisa stepped forward. Jake, our analysts have been studying their ships. They're powerful, but they're also designed for conventional warfare. They expect us to meet them in open battle with fleets of ships. They're not prepared for the kind of irregular warfare humans excel at. Exactly, Matt added. These aliens have probably conquered dozens of worlds, but I bet they've never faced a species like us. We don't just have armies and navies. We have civilians who know how to fight, police forces trained in urban warfare, and millions of people who won't. Just roll over and accept occupation. The conference continued for another 20 minutes, with leaders debating the wisdom of resistance. Some argued for negotiation, others for immediate surrender. But in the end, the decision was unanimous. Humanity would not bow to alien invaders. Jake composed the response message himself. It was short and direct. This is Captain Jake Morrison, of the Earth Defense Force, speaking for all humanity. We have received your surrender demand. Our answer is no. Earth is not for sale, not for conquest, and not for the taking. If you want our world, you'll have to fight for every inch of it. As the message was transmitted to the alien fleet, Jake turned to his team. Now we prepare for war. Contact every military base, every police station, every civilian defense group. Tell them to get ready. We're about to show the universe what happens when you threaten humanity. Admiral Kexthal received the human response with surprise rather than anger. In his experience, primitive species either surrendered immediately or made token resistance before giving up. This direct refusal was unusual but not particularly concerning. Admiral, Captain Veximer said, should we proceed with the standard bombardment sequence? Kexthal considered his options. The humans were clearly irrational, but that would make the conquest slightly more interesting. Yes, begin the attack. Target their military installations first. Once they see our power, they'll reconsider their foolish decision. As the Zephyrian fleet moved into Earth's orbit, neither side fully understood what they were about to face. The aliens expected a quick victory over a primitive species. The humans expected a desperate fight for survival. Neither anticipated that this conflict would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The first Zephyrian attack began exactly as Admiral Kexthal had planned. His fleet moved into position around Earth, their massive ships casting shadows over the planet's surface. The attack started with precise energy beams that struck military bases, communication centers, and government buildings across the globe. The New York Orbital Defense Platform was the first target. The massive structure, humanity's most advanced military installation, disappeared in a bright flash of alien energy. 3,000 people died instantly. Admiral Kexthal watched the destruction on his screens and nodded with satisfaction. This display of power would surely break the humans' will to fight. He was wrong. Captain Jake Morrison watched the platform's destruction from the command bunker beneath Colorado's mountains. The loss of so many lives filled him with rage, but also with determination. Around him, his staff worked frantically to coordinate Earth's defense. Jake, Commander Lisa Brown called out, her voice tight with emotion. We're getting reports from around the world. They've hit the Pentagon, the Kremlin, the Chinese military headquarters, and dozens of other targets. But our forces are still responding. Jake looked at the tactical display. Red marks showed where the aliens had struck, but green dots indicated that human forces were moving to counterattack. What do we have available? Not much in terms of proper warships, Lisa admitted. But Lieutenant Commander Amy Taylor has an idea. She's gathered every civilian ship she can find at the Luna shipyard. On the screen, Jake could see Amy's makeshift fleet. cargo haulers, mining vessels, passenger ships, and even luxury yachts were being hastily fitted with whatever weapons could be found. Most carried nothing more than industrial cutting lasers and mining charges, but Amy had over 200 ships ready to fight. "It's suicide," Jake said quietly. "Maybe," Lisa replied. "But Amy says she'd rather die fighting than live as a slave." "Amy!" Taylor stood on the bridge of the cargo ship Determination, looking out at her ragtag fleet. Most of her captains were civilians who had never fired a shot in anger. Their ships were slow, lightly armed, and completely outmatched by the alien vessels. But they were all volunteers, and they were all angry. "All ships, this is Amy," she broadcast to her fleet. "We're not soldiers, and these aren't warships. But we're human, and those aliens just killed 3,000 of our people. They think we'll surrender after one attack. Let's show them how wrong they are." The civilian fleet accelerated toward the alien ships. The Zephyrians watched in confusion as the primitive vessels approached. Captain Vexamor studied the sensor readings with growing bewilderment. "Admiral," he said, "the human ships are moving directly toward our fleet. Their weapons are minimal, and their shields are almost non-existent. This appears to be a suicide attack." Admiral Kextel was equally puzzled. "Perhaps they're trying to ram us?" "No rational species would waste ships and live so carelessly." "Are they trying to negotiate?" "No, sir. They're firing on our ships." The human fleet opened fire with their improvised weapons. Industrial lasers, normally used for cutting metal, struck the alien ship's shields. Mining charges, designed to break apart asteroids, exploded against their hulls. The weapons did little damage, but the aliens had never seen anything like this before. Amy's ship shuddered as alien energy beams tore through its hull. She was dying, but she had one chance left. All ships ramming speed. Make them pay for every ship they destroy. The cargo ship Determination struck the alien cruiser Mighty Conqueror at full speed. The explosion destroyed both vessels, but it also did something more important. It showed the galaxy that humans would die before they would surrender, down on Earth's surface. The real war was just beginning. The aliens had landed troops in major cities around the world, expecting quick surrender once the local populations saw their advanced weapons and armor. They had studied human history and knew that most species collapsed once their governments and military leaders were eliminated. They had not studied human history carefully enough. Marine Sergeant Tony Garcia crouched in the ruins of downtown Los Angeles, watching alien soldiers march through the streets. Their energy weapons could punch through concrete, and their armor could stop any bullet his Marines could fire. But Tony had learned something important during his 3 tours in Afghanistan. Technology didn't always win battles. "Listen up," he whispered to his squad. "These aliens are tough, but they're not invincible. They move in formation, they rely on their technology, and they expect us to fight them fair. We're not going to do that." Tony's squad had spent the last 6 hours placing explosives throughout the city. Not just military explosives, but fertilizer bombs, improvised chemical weapons, and booby traps made from household items. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had superior knowledge of how to fight dirty. The first alien patrol walked into Tony's trap at noon. The explosion brought down an entire office building, crushing 6 alien soldiers. The survivors called for backup, but Tony's Marines were already moving to their next position. "This is Sergeant Garcia to all units," Tony broadcast on the emergency frequency. "The aliens bleed and they die. Use everything you've got. Fight smart, fight dirty, and make them pay for every block they take." Similar scenes played out across the planet. In London, police officers used knowledge gained from decades of fighting terrorists to ambush alien patrols. In Tokyo, civilians who had never held weapons before learned to make bombs from kitchen chemicals. In Moscow, soldiers who had fought in Chechnya taught alien invaders the meaning of urban warfare. The Zephyrians found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. When they destroyed a human command post, 3 more appeared. When they killed human leaders, new ones took their place. When they captured human soldiers, civilians picked up their weapons and continued fighting. Admiral Kexthal stared at the reports coming in from the surface. His troops were taking heavy casualties, not from advanced weapons, but from primitive bombs and ambush tactics. His psychologists had predicted that humans would surrender once they saw the futility of resistance. Instead, they seemed to be fighting harder. "Admiral," Captain Veximer said nervously, "our ground forces are requesting additional support. The humans are using tactics we've never encountered. They're hiding in their own cities, using their own people as shields, and fighting with weapons that shouldn't be effective against our armor." "How is that possible?" Kexthal demanded. "They're not following standard military doctrine, sir. They're fighting like animals. They booby-trap their own buildings, poison their own water supplies to deny them to us, and continue fighting even after their command structures are destroyed." Kexthal reviewed the battle reports. In every previous conquest, the target species had fought conventionally. They had armies, navies, and air forces that could be defeated through superior technology and tactics. But humans seem to have turned their entire population into soldiers. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're intercepting human communications. They're not just using their military frequencies. They're coordinating through civilian channels, social media, and even children's video games. Every human appears to be part of their war effort." For the first time in his career, Admiral Kexthal felt uncertain. The conquest of Earth was supposed to take 6 hours. It had been 3 days, and his forces were barely holding the territory they had captured. The humans were not just resisting. They were adapting, learning, and fighting back with increasing effectiveness. "What do you recommend?" he asked his staff. "We could increase the orbital bombardment," suggested Captain Veximer. "Destroy their cities completely and rule over a dead planet?" Kexthal shook his head. "The Empire wants productive worlds, not wastelands. No, we need to break their will to fight." But as reports continued to pour in from the surface, Admiral Kexthal began to suspect that breaking humanity's will to fight might be impossible. These creatures seemed to grow more determined with each loss, more creative with each setback. For the first time in Zephyrian history, an invasion was not proceeding according to plan. On Earth, Jake Morrison coordinated the global resistance from his bunker. The reports were grim. Millions were dead, entire cities were in ruins, and the aliens controlled most major population centers. But humanity was still fighting, still resisting, still refusing to give up. "Sir," Lisa Brown reported, "we're getting messages from resistance cells worldwide. They're asking for more weapons, more supplies, more targets." Jake smiled grimly. "Give them everything we have." These aliens made one crucial mistake. "What's that?" They thought they were fighting an army. They didn't realize they were fighting an entire species. 3 weeks had passed since the Zephyrian invasion began, and Admiral Kexthal found himself in a position he had never experienced before. He was losing. The Admiral stood in his command center, staring at casualty reports that made no sense. His forces had superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and complete control of Earth's orbital space. Yet human resistance was growing stronger every day, not weaker. "Admiral," Captain Veximer approached cautiously, "High Command is requesting a status report. They're asking when we can expect complete pacification of the target world." Kexthal, 4 eyes narrowed. "Tell them I need reinforcements?" "The Second Fleet at minimum." "Sure." "High Command believes that requesting additional forces for a primitive world would reflect poorly on your leadership record." "Then High Command doesn't understand what we're facing here," Kexthal replied sharply. "These humans are not like other species we have conquered. They don't follow logical patterns of behavior." In the ship's detention center, Subcommander Yxeho was conducting his own investigation. As the fleet's intelligence officer, he had been tasked with studying human psychology to predict their next moves. What he had discovered kept him awake during his sleep cycles. Yxeho had accessed Earth's digital networks and downloaded vast amounts of human historical data. He had studied their wars, their conflicts, their methods of fighting. What he found horrified him. "Computer," he said to the ship's artificial intelligence, Display human conflict statistics for the past 500 years. The holographic display showed a timeline of human wars. Yexahel's eyes widened as he saw the data. Humans had been fighting continuously for centuries. They had developed thousands of different ways to kill each other, and they had never stopped improving their methods. These creatures have been at war with themselves for their entire recorded history, Yexahel muttered. They've fought in deserts, jungles, cities, mountains, and frozen wastelands. They fought with stones, swords, guns, bombs, and chemicals. They fought for food, territory, religion, politics, and abstract concepts. The computer added more data to the display. Sub-Commander, humans have a phrase they use frequently in warfare: adapt, improvise, overcome. This appears to be their primary military doctrine. Yexahel studied recordings of human battles. He watched primitive humans defeat technologically superior enemies through cunning and determination. He saw small groups of fighters hold off entire armies. He witnessed humans continuing to fight even when victory seemed impossible. Computer, what is the longest recorded human resistance to occupation? Multiple examples exist of human resistance lasting decades or centuries. The humans appear to have a cultural inability to accept permanent defeat. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Dr. Elena Vasquez was conducting her own research. The former anthropologist had become humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, studying, captured Zephyrian equipment and intercepted communications. Jake, she called to Captain Morrison over the secure communication link, I've been analyzing their battle tactics. The aliens follow very predictable patterns. They rely heavily on their technology and expect enemies to behave logically. What does that mean for us? Jake asked. It means we have an advantage they don't understand. Their entire military doctrine is based on fighting rational enemies who make logical decisions. But humans don't always act rationally, especially when we're angry. Elena had spent weeks studying Zephyrian psychology through their own records. She had learned that they were a highly logical species that valued efficiency and order. They had conquered hundreds of worlds by following the same basic strategy: overwhelming force followed by psychological domination. The problem is, Elena continued, their psychology assumes that all intelligent species will eventually accept defeat when the cost of resistance becomes too high. But humans have a different relationship with cost and sacrifice. Captain Brandon Lee was proving Elena's point in the ruins of Detroit. The former Army Ranger had organized civilian resistance cells throughout the Midwest, using lessons learned from every guerrilla war in human history. Listen carefully, Brandon told a group of factory workers who had volunteered to fight. The aliens have better weapons and armor, but they don't understand the most important rule of warfare: the enemy gets a vote. Brandon's group had been studying alien patrol patterns for 2 weeks. They had learned that Zephyrian soldiers followed rigid schedules and used the same routes repeatedly. It was efficient, but it was also predictable. In Vietnam, farmers with simple weapons defeated the most powerful military on Earth, Brandon explained. In Afghanistan, fighters with homemade bombs held off superpowers for decades. The aliens think they're fighting an army, but they're really fighting a culture. The resistance cell had prepared a complex ambush using materials from the abandoned automotive factories. They had turned car parts into bombs, industrial chemicals into weapons, and assembly line robots into automated sentries. When the alien patrol entered the factory district, they walked into a trap that had been designed by people who understood both human history and alien psychology. The attack lasted only minutes, but it eliminated an entire Zephyrian squad and captured their equipment. Remember, Brandon told his fighters as they prepared to move to their next position, we're not just fighting for territory. We're fighting to teach them that conquering humans is impossible. Similar scenes were playing out across the planet. In the Amazon rainforest, indigenous tribes used traditional hunting techniques to ambush alien patrols. In the Sahara Desert, nomadic fighters disappeared into the sand after every attack. In the Himalayas, mountain climbers turned their knowledge Of extreme conditions into tactical advantages, the Zephyrians found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow the rules of conventional warfare. Humans fought in impossible conditions, used unconventional weapons, and continued fighting even after suffering devastating losses. Admiral Kexthal received a communication from Zephyrian High Command. The message was brief and unwelcome. Admiral, the Emperor is concerned about the delay in completing the Earth conquest. You are authorized to use enhanced pacification measures. Enhanced pacification measures meant destroying civilian populations to break enemy morale. It was a tactic that had never failed to end resistance on other worlds. Kexthal hoped it would work on Earth, but he was beginning to doubt everything he thought he knew about warfare. Sir, Sub-Commander Yexahal entered the command center, carrying a datapad filled with his research. I need to report something important about human psychology. What is it? Admiral, I've studied their history extensively. When humans face extinction-level threats, they don't surrender. They become more dangerous. Every time their species has faced potential annihilation, they've responded by developing new ways to fight and survive. Kexthal looked at the intelligence. Report. Are you saying that threatening to destroy them will make them fight harder? Yes, sir. Human history shows that they respond to overwhelming force with increased innovation and determination. They have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When they face impossible odds, they invent new ways to overcome them. The report included examples from human history, civilizations that had fought to the last person rather than accept conquest, soldiers who had held impossible positions until death, and entire populations that had chosen destruction over surrender. There's something else, Admiral, Yexahal continued. They're already adapting our technology. Reports from the surface indicate that humans are reverse engineering our weapons and incorporating them into their own equipment. They're learning faster than any species we've encountered. Kexthal felt a chill run through his body. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had never faced a species that improved during the course of a war. Most civilizations collapsed under the strain of conflict. Humans seemed to thrive on it. What do you recommend? The Admiral asked. Sir, I recommend we consider negotiation. The humans have already demonstrated that they cannot be easily conquered. Continuing this war may result in casualties we cannot afford. But Admiral Kexthal knew that negotiation was not an option. The Zephyrian Empire did not negotiate with primitive species. They conquered or they destroyed. There was no middle ground. As he prepared to implement enhanced pacification measures, Kexthal wondered if the Empire had finally encountered a species that could not be conquered. The thought terrified him more than any enemy he had ever faced. On Earth, Jake Morrison was coordinating with resistance leaders worldwide. The reports were encouraging. Human forces were not just surviving. They were learning, adapting, and fighting back with increasing effectiveness. Elena, he called to the scientist, how long before we can start producing weapons using their technology? We're already doing it, Elena replied with a smile. Brandon's team captured enough alien equipment to reverse engineer their energy. Weapons, we should have prototypes ready within days. Jake nodded. The aliens had made their biggest mistake by underestimating humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. Soon, they would learn that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were survivors, innovators, and fighters who had never learned the meaning of surrender. Admiral Kexthal stood before the massive holographic display showing Earth from orbit. The planet's surface was marked with thousands of red zones indicating active human resistance. After 6 weeks of fighting, the Zephyrian Empire had committed. Not just the Third Conquest Fleet, but also the Second and Fourth Fleets. Over 2,000 alien ships now surrounded the small blue world. Admiral, Captain Veximer reported, High Command has authorized the use of planetary bombardment weapons. They want a demonstration of power that will break human morale once and for all. Kexthal nodded grimly. The decision had been made at the highest levels of the Empire. If humans would not surrender through conventional conquest, they would Learn fear through overwhelming destruction. Target the continent they call Australia, he ordered. It's isolated from their main population centers but large enough to demonstrate our power. Begin orbital bombardment. The Zephyrian fleets, most powerful weapons, turned toward Earth. Energy beams that could crack planets began charging. Within hours, the entire continent of Australia would be turned into molten glass, visible from space as a warning to the rest of humanity. The bombardment began at dawn. Massive energy beams struck the Australian continent, turning cities into vapor and mountains into glass. The destruction was visible from every part of Earth as the night sky lit up with the glow of a dying landmass. 25 million people died in the first hour. Admiral Kexthol watched the destruction with satisfaction. No species had ever continued fighting after witnessing such overwhelming power. The humans would surely surrender now. He was wrong. Again, Jake Morrison watched the destruction of Australia from his command bunker, tears streaming down his face. The loss of life was staggering, but the human response was not what the aliens expected. Instead of despair, Jake felt something else, pure, burning rage. "Sir," Commander Lisa Brown called out, her voice shaking with emotion, "we're getting reports from around the world. Military bases, civilian groups, even children are volunteering to fight. The alien attack has made everyone angry." Jake turned to his staff. "Activate Protocol Omega. Every human on Earth is now a combatant. We're not just fighting for our countries anymore. We're fighting for our species." Protocol Omega was humanity's ultimate contingency plan. It turned the entire planet into a military base. Schools became training centers, hospitals became weapon factories, and every civilian became a potential soldier. The aliens had just made 7 billion humans their personal enemies. Admiral Kate Murphy, who had taken command of the remaining Earth Defense Forces, stood in the ruins of what had been Sydney. She had been visiting Australia when the bombardment began and had survived only by being deep underground. Now she was humanity's most senior military officer, and she was planning something unprecedented. "Listen to me," she broadcast to every human resistance cell on Earth. "The aliens think they've broken our will by destroying Australia. They're wrong. They've just shown us what we're really fighting for. From this moment forward, every human being is a weapon of war." Kate's message was heard by 7 billion people. Children who had been playing video games began learning to make explosives. Elderly people who had never held weapons became saboteurs. Scientists who had spent their lives saving lives began developing ways to kill aliens. The change was immediate and terrifying. Humans had always been capable of incredible violence when threatened, but now that violence was focused on a single enemy. The aliens had turned Earth into a fortress planet defended by an entire species. Pilot Marcus Johnson was leading one of the most dangerous missions in human history. His team had been tasked with capturing a Zephyrian command ship, not for its weapons or technology, but for its computer systems. Humanity needed to learn everything about their enemy. "Remember," Marcus told his team as they approached the alien vessel in their captured shuttle, "we're not just stealing information. We're sending a message. No alien ship is safe from human attack." The mission was a success. Marcus and his team infiltrated the command ship, copied its entire database, and escaped before the aliens knew what had happened. But more importantly, they had proven that humans could reach any target, anywhere, anytime they chose. The stolen data revealed something remarkable about the Zephyrian Empire. They had conquered over 400 worlds, but they had never faced sustained resistance. Every species they had encountered had either surrendered quickly or been destroyed. They had no experience dealing with an enemy that refused to give up. Dr. Elena Vasquez studied the captured data with growing excitement. "Jake, this is incredible. We now know everything about their technology, their tactics, even their psychology. But more importantly, we know their weaknesses." "What weaknesses?" Jake asked. "They're completely dependent on their technology. Their soldiers can't fight without their equipment, their ships can't operate without their computers, and their entire military doctrine assumes technological superiority. But we're catching up fast. Elena was right. Human engineers were reverse engineering alien technology at an unprecedented rate. Weapons that had taken the Zephyrian centuries to develop were being reproduced by humans in weeks. The aliens' technological advantage was disappearing. Engineer Sophie Martinez was leading the most ambitious project in human history. Her team was not just copying alien technology, they were improving it. Human creativity combined with alien knowledge was producing weapons that neither species had imagined. The aliens build their technology for efficiency and reliability, Sophie explained to her team. But humans build things to win. We're going to take their weapons and make them better. Sophie's team had captured enough alien equipment to understand their most powerful weapons, including the planet killers that had destroyed Australia. But instead of just copying them, they were redesigning them to be more effective and easier. To build in 6 months, Sophie announced, we'll have planet killer weapons of our own. But ours will be better. The Zephyrian Empire was beginning to realize they had made a terrible mistake. Reports from across the galaxy indicated that other conquered species were taking notice of the human resistance. For the first time in centuries, rebellions were breaking out on worlds that had been peaceful for generations. Sub-Commander Yexahol presented his latest intelligence report to Admiral Kexthal. Sir, the human resistance is having effects beyond Earth. Our subject worlds are questioning our authority. Some are even attempting armed rebellion. How is that possible? Kexthal demanded. The humans are broadcasting their resistance activities across the galaxy. They're sending messages in hundreds of languages, telling other species that the Zephyrian Empire can be defeated. They're providing tactical information and encouraging rebellion. The report showed intercepts of human broadcasts. Messages of defiance, tactical manuals, and encouragement were being transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. Humans were not just fighting for their own freedom. They were trying to liberate every species the Empire had conquered. There's more, Admiral, Yexol continued. The humans have begun adapting our most advanced weapons. They're not just using our technology. They're making it better. Our technological advantage is disappearing. Admiral Kexthal felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The Zephyrian Empire was built on the assumption that they would always be technologically superior to their enemies. But humans were learning faster than any species in galactic history. What do you recommend? He asked. Sir, I recommend we use our planet-killer weapons to destroy Earth completely. The humans have become too dangerous to be allowed to survive. But even as Yexol spoke, human infiltrators were moving through the Zephyrian fleet. Sophie Martinez's team had not just learned to build alien weapons. They had learned to control them. The aliens' most powerful weapons were about to be turned against their creators on Earth. Jake Morrison coordinated the final phase of humanity's counterattack. The aliens had made their biggest mistake by escalating the conflict. They had turned a planetary conquest into a galactic war, and they had chosen the wrong enemy. All units, Jake broadcast to resistance cells across the planet. This is it. The aliens are preparing to use their planet killers against us. But we have a surprise for them. Sophie's team has taken control of their weapons. In 1 hour, we're going to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. The countdown began. Human engineers had spent months learning to control alien technology. Now they were about to use the Empire's own weapons against them. The aliens had brought planet killers to destroy Earth, but humans had turned those weapons into tools of liberation. Admiral Kexthal watched in horror as his own weapons turned against his fleet. The massive energy beams that were meant to destroy Earth instead tore through Zephyrian ships. In minutes, half of his fleet was destroyed by their own technology. How is this possible? He demanded. Sir, Captain Veximer reported in panic, the humans have somehow gained control of our weapons systems. They're using our own planet killers against us? For the first time in Zephyrian history, their ultimate weapons had been turned against them. The psychological impact was devastating. If humans could control their most advanced technology, then no Zephyrian ship was safe. The destruction of half the Zephyrian fleet sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. For the first time in their history, the mighty Empire had suffered a major defeat. News of the human victory spread faster than light itself, carried by traders, smugglers, and communications networks across hundreds of star systems on the planet Kepler-7, a world that had been conquered by the Zephyrians 50 years ago. The local population gathered around their communication devices to listen to broadcasts from Earth. The blue-skinned Keplites had accepted their defeat decades ago, but now they heard something impossible. Humans were fighting back and winning. "Did you hear that?" whispered Zexka, a Keplite resistance leader who had been hiding in the mountains for years. The humans destroyed half the Zephyrian fleet with their own weapons. The broadcast from Earth was simple but powerful. A human voice speaking in broken. Keplite said, "We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not give up. If we can fight them, so can you." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Rigel 5, the insectoid Rigelians began sabotaging Zephyrian mining operations. On Volf 359, the crystalline wolfites started attacking supply convoys. Everywhere the Empire had established control, subject species began to remember what freedom felt like. Admiral Kexthal watched his empire crumbling from his flagship. Intelligence reports showed rebellions breaking out on over 100 worlds. The carefully maintained order of 3 centuries was falling apart because of one small planet that refused to be conquered. "Admiral," Subcommander Yexahal reported, his voice filled with fear, "High Command is demanding immediate action. The Emperor himself has expressed concern about the spreading rebellions. We need to end this war quickly before the entire Empire collapses." Kexthal stared at the tactical display showing Earth. The planet was still there. Still defiant, still broadcasting messages of resistance to the galaxy. What do our psychologists recommend? They believe the human resistance is inspiring other species because it proves the Empire can be defeated. If we can break the humans, the rebellions will stop. But breaking the humans had proven impossible. They had survived orbital bombardment, adapted alien technology, and turned the Empire's own weapons against them. Every victory against humanity had only made them more dangerous. On Earth, Commander Ryan Clark was preparing for the most daring mission in human history. His team of Special Forces soldiers had been training for weeks using captured alien technology. Their target was not a military installation or a fleet of ships. They were going to attack the Zephyrian homeworld itself. "Listen carefully," Ryan told his team as they prepared to board their captured alien ship. "We're not going to destroy their planet or kill their civilians. We're going to do something much more effective. We're going to embarrass them in front of the entire galaxy." The human strike team had spent months learning Zephyrian technology and culture. They knew the location of every major city, every military base, and every communication center on the alien homeworld. But their mission was not destruction. It was something much more powerful: humiliation. Ryan's ship, disguised as a damaged Zephyrian vessel, passed through the Empire's defenses without challenge. The homeworld's security was designed to stop external attacks, not infiltration by enemies using their own technology. The team landed in the capital city of Zephyr Prime during the planet's equivalent of rush hour. Millions of aliens filled the streets, going about their daily lives in complete confidence that their empire was invincible. They were about to learn otherwise. Ryan and his team made their way to the Planetary Communication Center, the facility that broadcast official Empire news to hundreds of worlds. Using their knowledge of Zephyrian systems, they quickly took control of the broadcasting equipment. "This is Commander Ryan Clark of the human species," Ryan announced, his voice being transmitted to every world in the Zephyrian Empire. "We interrupt your regular programming to bring you an important message from Earth." The message that followed was heard by trillions of beings across the galaxy. Ryan spoke in the common galactic language, but his words were translated into hundreds of local dialects by the Empire's own translation systems. "People of the galaxy," Ryan said, "we are humanity, and we come to you from Earth. For months, the Zephyrian Empire has tried to conquer our world. They have failed. They have used their most powerful weapons against us, and we have turned those weapons against them. Today, we stand in their capital city to tell you that the Empire can be defeated." The broadcast showed images from Earth, humans fighting against impossible odds, alien ships being destroyed by their own weapons, and resistance fighters from around the world united in defiance. But more importantly, it showed the faces of ordinary humans who had refused to surrender. "We do not seek to conquer you," Ryan continued. "We seek to liberate you. Every species has the right to be free. Every world has the right to govern itself. The age of the Zephyrian Empire is ending, and the age of freedom is beginning." The broadcast lasted only 10 minutes, but its impact was immediate and devastating. Across the galaxy, billions of beings who had lived under Zephyrian rule for generations suddenly realized that freedom was possible. On Kepler 7, Zexka emerged from the mountains with thousands of followers. The Keplite resistance, inspired by human courage, began attacking Zephyrian installations with weapons copied from human designs on Rigel 5. The Rigelians used their natural ability to burrow underground to destroy the foundation of every Zephyrian building on their planet. They had learned from human examples that any weakness could be exploited. On Volf 359, the crystalline wolfites discovered that their bodies could interfere with Zephyrian electronics. They began a campaign of passive resistance that shut down the Empire's computer systems across their world. Merle Kextel received reports of the broadcast with growing horror. The humans had not just attacked his homeworld. They had turned his own communication system against him. Every subject species in the Empire had heard the message of human defiance. "Sir," Captain Vexummer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from garrison commanders on 73 worlds. They report that local populations are overwhelming their positions." "Surrender requests?" Kexthal could barely comprehend the words. Zephyrian forces did not surrender. They had never surrendered in the history of the Empire. "Yes, sir. The commanders report that they're facing coordinated attacks using tactics copied from human resistance manuals. The subject species are fighting like humans." That was the key phrase that struck terror into every Zephyrian heart. Fighting like humans. It meant unpredictable tactics, suicidal courage, and absolute refusal to accept defeat. It meant that the galaxy's most feared military force was being copied by species they had thought broken and defeated. Engineer Sophie Martinez watched the galaxy-wide rebellion from her laboratory on Earth. Her team had just completed their latest project, human-designed weapons that were more powerful than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. "Jake," she called to Captain Morrison, "we're ready for the final phase. Our new ships are armed with weapons the aliens can't match. More importantly, we figured out how to mass-produce them." Jake studied the technical specifications with amazement. Human engineering, inspired by alien technology but improved by human creativity, had produced weapons that surpassed anything in the galaxy. "How many can we build?" he asked. "Thousands," Sophie replied with a smile. "We've converted every factory on Earth to weapons production. We can build ships faster than the aliens can destroy them." The tide had turned completely. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory. The Zephyrian Empire, which had seemed invincible just months ago, was crumbling under the weight of galaxy-wide rebellion. Admiral Kexthal made a decision that would have been unthinkable at the beginning of the war. Standing before his remaining fleet commanders, he spoke words that no Zephyrian admiral had ever said. "We must consider the possibility of negotiating with the humans." The silence that followed was deafening. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire had never negotiated with an enemy. They conquered or they destroyed. There was no middle ground. "Sir," Sub-Commander Yexahal said carefully, "the humans have made it clear that they will accept nothing less than complete Zephyrian withdrawal from all conquered worlds and the dismantling of the Empire." "Those terms are impossible," Captain Vexumer protested. "The Empire cannot simply cease to exist." But as reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy, it became clear that the Empire was already ceasing to exist. World after world was declaring independence, and there were no longer enough Zephyrian forces to maintain control on Earth. Jake Morrison received a message that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. It was a formal communication from Admiral Kexthal, requesting negotiations for the end of hostilities. Jake read the message twice before calling his staff together. "The aliens want to negotiate," he announced. "What are our terms?" "Commander." Lisa Brown asked. Jake looked out at the stars, thinking of all the species across the galaxy who were fighting for their freedom using tactics they had learned from humanity. "Complete surrender," he said simply. "Nothing less." The negotiation chamber aboard the neutral trading station Harmony Point had never hosted such an important meeting. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness what many believed impossible: the surrender of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Kexthal entered the chamber with only 2 escorts, a dramatic change from the overwhelming force he had commanded just 1 year ago. His once proud fleet had been reduced to less than 300 ships, scattered across a crumbling empire. His 4 eyes showed exhaustion and defeat as he took his seat across from the human delegation, General Alex Thompson, who now represented Earth's unified military command, studied the alien admiral with calm satisfaction. The former Army colonel had been promoted rapidly as humanity's war effort expanded from planetary defense to galactic liberation. Beside him sat Jake Morrison, now bearing the rank of admiral, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, whose understanding of alien psychology had proven crucial to human victory. "Admiral Kexthal," Alex said formally, "we are here to discuss the terms of your surrender and the future structure of galactic governance." Kexthal's translator device rendered the human words into his native language, but he understood their meaning perfectly. The Zephyrian Empire, which had dominated the galaxy for 3 centuries, was about to cease existing. "General Thompson," Kexthal replied, his voice heavy with resignation, "I am authorized by the Zephyrian High Command to agree to your terms with certain conditions." "There are no conditions," Jake interrupted firmly. "You invaded our world, expecting easy conquest. You destroyed an entire continent and killed millions of innocent people. You had your chance to negotiate when you first arrived. That time has passed." The alien admiral looked around the chamber at the dozens of species representatives who had gathered to witness this historic moment. Many were former subjects of his empire, species he had personally helped to conquer. Their expressions showed no sympathy for his situation. "What are your terms?" Kexthal asked quietly. Alex opened the formal document that had been prepared by the newly formed Galactic Liberation Council. The terms were simple but comprehensive, designed to prevent the Zephyrian Empire from ever threatening galactic peace. Again, first, Alex read, "complete withdrawal of all Zephyrian military forces from every world you have conquered. You will return to your home system and remain there under galactic supervision. Second, dismantling of your war fleet. You may retain ships for defense and commerce, but no vessel capable of planetary bombardment will be permitted. Third, payment of reparations to every species you have oppressed. These payments will continue for 50 years and will be supervised by the Galactic Council. Fourth, transformation of your government from a military empire to a civilian democracy, with representatives from other species serving as advisors during the transition." Kexthal listened to each term with growing despair. Everything his species had built over 3 centuries would be destroyed. "And if we refuse these terms?" "Then the galaxy will enforce them," Elena said calmly. "Over 200 worlds have joined the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Every one of them has armed forces trained in human tactical doctrine. You are facing not just humanity, but an entire galaxy that has learned to fight like humans." The truth of her words was undeniable. Intelligence reports showed that former Zephyrian subjects had not only declared independence, but were actively helping each other develop military capabilities. The Keplites were sharing their industrial technology. The Rigelians were providing raw materials, and the Wolfites were contributing their electronic expertise. The galaxy had become a vast network of mutual defense, all inspired by humanity's example of resistance. "There is one more term?" Jake added, standing to address not just Kexthol but the entire chamber. The establishment of the Terran Doctrine. As the foundation of galactic law, what is the Terran Doctrine? Asked Zekska. The Keplite representative who had led his world's successful rebellion. Jake smiled as he explained the principles that would reshape galactic civilization. The Terran Doctrine states that every intelligent species has the right to self-determination. No world may be conquered or controlled by another. All conflicts must be resolved through negotiation or defensive action only. And most importantly, any species that attempts galactic conquest will face the combined opposition of all free worlds. The chamber erupted in approving sounds from dozens of different species. For the first time in galactic history, there would be a law specifically designed to prevent empire building and protect the rights of smaller civilizations. Kexthol realized that he was not just witnessing the end of his empire, but the beginning of an entirely new form of galactic organization. Instead of conquest and subjugation, the humans were proposing cooperation and mutual defense. Why? He asked suddenly. Why not simply conquer us in return? You have the power now. You could build your own empire. Alex and Jake exchanged glances. Before Jake answered, because that's not who we are. We didn't fight you to become conquerors. We fought you to remain free. Now we want to ensure that every species in the galaxy can remain free. The formal surrender ceremony took place 3 days later. Admiral Kexthol signed the documents that officially ended the Zephyrian Empire and established the new Galactic Council. Representatives from 247 worlds witnessed the historic moment, but the real celebration was happening on Earth, where billions of humans watched the ceremony via galactic broadcast. The species that had faced extinction just 2 years ago was now being hailed as the liberator of the galaxy. Captain Brandon Lee, now commanding Earth's new orbital defense platform, watched the ceremony from his station above the planet. The platform was built using a combination of human engineering and technology gifted by grateful allied species. It was more powerful than anything the Zephyrians had ever constructed, but it was designed purely for defense. Hard to believe. It's over, said Commander Amy Taylor, who had survived her suicide mission and now served as Brandon's second-in-command. It's not over, Brandon replied, looking out at the stars. It's just beginning. We've got an entire galaxy to help rebuild. The reconstruction effort was already underway. Human engineers were traveling to dozens of worlds, sharing the technology they had developed during the war. But more importantly, they were sharing the human philosophy of never giving up, always adapting, and standing together against oppression. Engineer Sophie Martinez had established research stations on 12 different worlds, working with alien scientists to develop new technologies for peaceful purposes. The weapons she had designed to fight the Zephyrians were being converted into tools for construction, exploration, and healing. The aliens taught us something important, Sophie explained to a group of young engineers from various species. Technology is just a tool. What matters is the spirit of the people using it. Humans survived because we never stopped believing we could win. Dr. Elena Vasquez had founded the Galactic Institute for Cultural Understanding, where species from across the galaxy came to learn about each other. Her studies of human psychology during the war had revealed something remarkable. Humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their tactics, but their ability to inspire others to be brave. The Zephyrians conquered through fear, Elena told her students, but humans liberated through hope. We showed the galaxy that resistance was possible, that freedom was worth fighting for, and that even the smallest species could stand up to the mightiest empire. 1 year after the surrender, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of humanity's first exploration vessel, the UES Freedom. The ship was departing Earth on a mission to explore uncharted regions of the galaxy, searching for new species to welcome into the growing galactic community. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a message from the Galactic Council. 3 more worlds have requested membership in the Terran Alliance. Jake nodded with satisfaction. The Terran Alliance had grown from Earth's original defense pact to a galaxy-spanning organization dedicated to mutual protection and cooperation. Any world that faced aggression could call upon hundreds of allies for support, the bridge's main screen showed. The view ahead? Endless stars representing countless possibilities for exploration and discovery. But Jake knew that whatever they found out there, humanity would face it with the same determination that had defeated the Zephyrian Empire. "Set course for the unknown regions," Jake ordered. "Let's see what else the galaxy has to show us." As the UES Freedom jumped to faster-than-light speed, it carried with it the message that had transformed galactic civilization, that freedom was worth fighting for, that cooperation was stronger than conquest, and that even in the face of impossible odds, intelligent beings should never surrender their right to determine their own destiny. The Zephyrian Empire was gone, but its legacy lived on in the lesson it had taught the galaxy: never underestimate the power of a species that refuses to be conquered. The universe had learned why humans could not be defeated, and that knowledge had set an entire galaxy free.